There we go.
So, kia ora koutou, thank you for joining us today, and feel free to keep eating your lunch if that's what you're doing and you've joined us in between meetings. It's lovely to have you with us. Just going to open with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina kia uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, tihe Māori ora. So thank you for being with us today. We thought that we could collaborate between Environment Hubs and the Zero Waste Network, and so great to have a bit of a networking call where all of you could come on with us. So we want this to be a little bit informal. It's about sharing some experiences from some of our key organisations, so that we could look at some learnings and some challenges and how we can support those. So we have some lovely guests today. We have Mike speaking to us first. We have Carla, we have Emma, and we possibly might have Rena joining us from Tairāwhiti as well. So what I'm just going to do is pass over to Mike, and essentially this is, as I said, just a space just to reflect on these experiences. In terms of questions, etc., we'll do those at the end, so maybe feel free to put them in the chat if you're someone who just needs to get them down, and we can come back to them as we move on. I am just going to introduce myself. So ko Georgina Morrison aho, I'm the Executive Officer for Environment Hubs. And just really pleased to be here with you all today and your smiley faces. So
George, but wait, sorry to just do this. I'm wondering, we've got quite a small group, so we could just do a round of introductions.
Yeah, happy to do that. Shall we start with you, daughter, and then I'll just pick on people.
Okay, great. I'm Daughter. Hi, everybody. I'm the General Manager of the Zero Waste Network, so really similar to George. And it's a real pleasure to be working in collaboration with the EHA on this. This is a topic that is obviously increasingly important, and kind of disappointingly, we've all been kind of thrust into the midst of it quite regularly. So really, really important stuff, and I'm really grateful for our speakers today.
Thanks, Daughter. And perhaps just a reminder that you can change your name on the participant list, or clicking on the top on yourself and clicking the top 3 buttons, and then you can rename yourself if you want to chuck your organisation there as well. So Ellie, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking I had done that. Thanks, George. My name's Ellie. I work for the Zero Waste Network as the membership coordinator, and just doing behind the scenes work. And yeah, I'm really grateful to Carla, Mike and Emma for talking today, because I think it's very topical and has been very kind of on my heart and mind as well. So yeah, it'll be great to hear from them and kind of be together and be intentional about talking about what's going on, and yeah, what the future of this could be as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellie. Carla.
Kia ora tātou. I'm Carla. I'm the General Manager for the Auckland Zero Waste Hubs with Localised. So that's a Zero Waste Hub in Prana, Waira Valley, and also in Pilkington. Lovely to be here, and thank you for letting us share our journey that we had.
Oh, thanks, Carla. Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike Mars. I'm the General Manager at the Waiheke Resources Trust. And yeah, just happy to be here, and that we can take any questions, or just kind of go over what it takes to be in the community this deep, I guess, what's asked of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Emma.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Emma Horgan hiki aho. I'm the CEO for Sustaining Hawke's Bay Trust.
Thanks, Emma. Brigitte.
Kia ora koutou, Brigitte from Rebecca Cafe Aotearoa, co-founder, and I'm really excited about the prospect of collaboration. Wonderful, thank you so much. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Daniel.
Good day, everyone. I'm Daniel, CEO of the Beautification Trust. So our mahi is in South and East Auckland. Yeah, and just looking forward to this conversation.
Kia ora, Daniel. Anna.
Kia ora, I'm Anna, the coordinator at EHA, and I currently live in Tairāwhiti, so I'm interested to hear about what other experiences were had across the country as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Robin. Oh, you're on mute, Robin. No, still on mute. I find that mute button down bottom left. Still don't have you off mute, Robin, sorry. Are you on your phone or your computer? Phone? We can't hear you. I know it's a bit tricky to find the mute button on your phone. You might have to. Do you want to have a play around with that and try and find that mute button, and I'll pass to Vicky.
Kia ora koutou, ko Vicky Takawingwa. I'm the impact storyteller at Environment Hubs Aotearoa. I know quite a few of you, and I'm very excited to be here and hear more about the amazing mahi that some of our hubs and other organizations have done in the climate response, and very keen to think of how we can tell those amazing stories to the wider public. And yeah, just very keen to hear your experiences. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Robin, you're off mute. We'll go to you.
Yeah. Oh boy, was the laptop earlier when we were having a Zoom call with Anna, and now it's my phone. Okay. Kia ora, Robin Williamson from Sustainable Wanganui. And just, yeah, great to be checking in today to hear of others' experiences and what we can learn. Thanks.
Thanks, Robin. Lovely to have you with us. Pleased we got there. Joanna.
Kia ora koutou, ko Joe Makai tōku ingoa, based in Te Ika-a-Māui, and saw some really concerning waste behaviours after the recent cyclone. So really keen to hear more about potential research and spotlight on this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. I think I've done almost everyone apart from the James Bond looking EPK. It might be a leader. Do you want to introduce yourself? Okay. Perhaps if EPK comes back or wants to join us and introduce yourselves, let me know. Okay, so thanks for that suggestion, Jordan. It is nice to have a small group. Not as small as our previous group though. So Daniel, full credit to you for sticking in with workshops today. So I'll pass over to Mike.
Just 1 second.
So Mike is in a busy office, a very cool office, but we'll give him a few minutes to conduct.
I'm just giving everyone fair warning as they're coming in the door.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, look, do I have the ability to share then? Is that all right? Let's see here. Share screen. Yeah. Okay. Away we go. Okay. So basically we run the Waiheke Resources Trust, and its physical bricks and mortar is within an old bowls club, which is actually the highest point in Oniroa, and it has a giant bowls area that can double as a helicopter landing pad, which is all a very conducive to a space that is automatically seen as somewhere that's an evacuation point, and in a flood situation somewhere on high ground. So we were stood up as a CDC center. Let's see, 2 days before the floods, and we had a bunch of training around radios and other organizations that were involved, all happening kind of just right in the middle of it. We met with civil defense online, and had some great initial conversations around what services could be provided, what beds and linens and all these flashlights and food and could be provided to us, and then that person went home for the night, and kind of left Waiheke in the lurch. So a lot of the supplies and everything didn't really come in time, let's say, for if Waiheke had been severely impacted, it wouldn't have been there when it was needed. So that was a major concern, that the breakdown in communication kind of taught us to kind of fend for ourselves, and the need for a lot of these things ongoing to be here on the island. One common thing that we've learned is that Waiheke has 3 days of food if all shipping stops to Waiheke, which is everything is brought in by boat here. So we have 3 days of food, which is not a great place to start from in an emergency where, you know, if worse came to worse and those routes were cut down or stopped, similar to what we saw in the rest of the country, if it did happen to the ferries for some reason, you know, we would find ourselves in a very serious situation very, very quickly here on Waiheke. So what did happen was we did rally a lot of the marae. They have a lot of bedding and linens and things that we helped source and brought to the center. We also worked with WISCA with a lot of concerned pet owners that needed supplies. You know, we did this because the marae has always been, you know, very forthcoming and wanting to be a part of the solution, but they're low lying. They're right on the edge of the water, right next to a massive water course, low lying between two hills. So they're not positioned to be that space for some of the more common disaster areas. So the hard part about this too was that we were expected to just ramp up into a volunteer space really quickly and use our connections, which meant dropping everything else that we're actually paid to do, which is a difficult spot to be in. You know, we jumped at the chance because we care about our community and we will go the extra mile. And I think that's what's expected of community a lot of times. And we came out on top. But, you know, there might have been money for resources and beds and food, but, you know, we actually rallied around and found most of that without it getting here from Central Auckland. So I think that's a massive lesson to learn from that. Another bigger side project was getting everyone together for sandbagging. We ended up filling, this is just a tiny fraction of what we ended up filling and bringing to the center for sandbags. There's just so many hills here and so many ingresses that so many people are extremely vulnerable and trying to divert water away from a natural input right into down the hill, right into their house. So, you know, this is really important for us to get as many of those out as possible. We gave away a couple thousand bags and we filled a couple more. So, you know, it was, in the end, we had people from all kinds of different organizations coming in, filling sandbags nonstop. The burden that was placed on staff and the staff that were available and that could do things like myself was very high. So, you know, I filled sandbags and moved sandbags until I couldn't lift anything anymore, until my body was completely exhausted. My hands were closing like this and I couldn't stop them from closing because they were clenching up because I had moved so many sandbags. This is kind of the extent that people are telling us that we need to like act. And, you know, we can only get so much immediate buy-in. The thing is, these things flew out the door. There was a line all the way down the street trying to get these sandbags into people's cars. You know, they were extremely worried. And this is one way that they had that was proactive. So another way that was proactive that we kind of tapped into was food rescue. So not only did we go out and purchase more food to top up our food banks, but we went around to other places that we supply food to and told them to get them out of cold storage and fill up pantries, because that was going to be, you know, very much needed around the island. So we ended up stocking the entire refrigerator as well, in preparation for a lot of people spending the night. Now, I don't want to diminish the rest of the speakers here today, because I think their stories are more harrowing than mine, and I don't want to put myself on a platform. Waiheke missed, you know, we had issues, but we didn't face what the rest of the country faced. But it just goes to show that you're never out of the woods. There's always a potential for a storm to turn and end up on your front step and the disaster striking there. So, you know, we ended up not using a lot of what we had, but to be honest, we used our networks to reabsorb a lot of the things that we did end up buying for people that never managed to stay the night at the center. You know, back into our food rescue pantries, our refrigerators, and going back out to the people that need it the most, and probably lost work and weren't able to work and couldn't pay on a daily basis for that food. So it went right back immediately. It didn't go rotten in someone's cupboard somewhere like, oh yeah, there's that emergency food. We put it right back out to community. So there's a lot of follow through, I think, as well. You know, this kind of thing helped WRT kind of be seen as somewhere that's for everyone and helping genuinely in a time where people needed help and were scared. But I also think that it got new people here that might not have used the center, but were just met with like very positive atmosphere of community connection, which I think really toned down the nerves that people were feeling as well. You know, being happy, congenial, talking about normal things, you know, what we do with the pantry, the food, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Making genuine connections really helped, I think, calm and had people actually think about their neighbors and what they could do as a wider approach to community resilience. So that's probably where I'll end it. But if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Thanks, Mike. So I think what we'll do is we have the questions at the end, or even possibly, I mean, I've always got 10 questions, so I've just put some in the chat that you can have a think about as we move through. So what we might do is move into Carla's piece. So thank you for sharing your experience. And I do just want to mention, I think you had your whole family out sandbagging, right?
Yeah, we were all out there. Yep.
Yeah, that's an awesome effort, Mike. Thank you. Carla.
Yeah, hi everybody, and yeah, thank you for hearing our story. So yeah, I guess it was the Monday after the floods in Auckland. The North Shore, and particularly Parana Road, was really badly affected. We evacuated at about 4 o'clock on that Friday, and I've got all emotional. Sorry.
Take your time, Carla.
I'll show you the video and I'll get myself together. So this is a video that we put together of the story of our journey.
January 2023, Auckland was hit by a storm equaling a summer's worth of rainfall in 15 hours. This crippled Auckland with fast rising floods. The impact on vulnerable communities already living within tight means was catastrophic. The devastation to the North Shore communities was apparent, with people losing everything. The need to respond appropriately was urgent. The initial requirements were bedding and furniture to replace those made unsalvageable by the floodwaters. The localized zero waste hub stepped up. As the usual inorganics pickups were temporarily suspended, we quickly pivoted our operation to accommodate the emergency needs. Messages were sent out to the local community for donations and resources for pickup. Quickly, the donations came pouring in, and Storage for You and Mahurangi Wastebusters donated the use of a box truck. The North Shore Community Stakeholder Meeting evolved into the team establishing a referral process for social services to reach out to impacted families and help access furniture, goods, and bedding that were immediately required. We acted quickly to coordinate a response. Many offers of help were received from church groups, rest homes, and community facilities, and the generosity of donors kept coming in. To keep ahead of the offers and kind donations, more volunteers were needed. We became a member of Volunteering Auckland to enable an army of volunteers to step up. The want to help from Aucklanders was heartening, and rosters filled up quickly with many hands to the pump. This was a vital heartbeat to the successful distribution of donated goods. In 9 days of collections, the localized team received over 100 cubic meters of donated items. We have supported 22 families. Volunteers have donated 245 hours of their time. We provided bedding, furniture, food, and clothing to the Birkenhead Civil Defence Centre, provided 2 cubic meters of bedding to animal rescue groups, and collaborated with 37 organisations to ensure success. The localised culture of mahi ngā tahi, working together, stood strong in these storms and achieved a good outcome for a community-led and empowering response in this time of need, making the most of the resources available.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was, I pulled myself together. It's all, I find it all a bit emotional because it was such a full on 4 weeks for myself and the team. But yeah, to start the journey was Monday morning. Janet Cole from our Kapariki project called a community meeting of all our leaders, council and local board, when we kind of realised how bad things were on the shore. And I guess I've worked in community for 12 years. I had many connections and could see that there was going to be a gap in the support that our whānau was getting, particularly those that don't have insurance or don't have full insurance and had lost absolutely everything in their homes. And yeah, I called up Matthew. I said, I've got an idea. Can I do it? And he's like, go for it. Remembering there was only 3 in our team at that stage. So we borrowed a truck from Storage for You and yeah, went and put an advert out onto our local Facebook pages. And the response for our community wanting to support was absolutely phenomenal. We got to Friday and the warehouse was absolutely full with a lot of stuff, and then all church groups and our local rest homes had started collecting, and yeah, it was just about how we're going to manage this. So brought all of our social agencies together and worked out a referral system, and that's where we started supporting families. You know, phone calls from people where they had 2 blankets and 4 pillows sharing with a family of 4. So making sure that, you know, delivering beds out to people that had lost everything. There was 10 people sleeping in 2-bedroom homes because all downstairs was completely flooded out. So yeah, made the call on Friday morning to volunteer in Auckland and developed a volunteer program. And by Monday, we had a whole warehouse full of volunteers, corporate groups, university groups coming in and helping out with sorting the absolutely huge amounts of items that we got through the door. And yeah, it was really amazing for a young organisation on the shore to, you know, create such mana with the other community organisations, which was really amazing, but also to be able to give back. I guess the challenges were obviously the manpower, the time, and the magnitude of leftover items. So anybody that has done collecting would know that there's always a lot of linen and clothing left over. So I've delivered a whole load of clothing that wasn't suitable through to apparel, which is awesome. We've created an amazing new relationship with One Big Family who take referrals from social services. So they're now situated as a tenant with us, and agencies can come in and take clothing and bedding for free. So that was really amazing that we developed that relationship from this flood recovery. And what else? Yeah, a lot of clothing is left, which a group that sends containers over to the islands is coming to collect that tomorrow, which is really amazing. The team through at Pilkington took all of the flood damaged whiteware and fridges so we could continue to degas our fridges, and took yeah, a lot of load off so that the North Shore branch was able to power up and to be able to do this awesome mahi over 4 weeks. And then we've cleared the warehouse and went back to normal operation. Yeah, I think that's all from me. It was an awesome journey. It was, I think the biggest thing, and same as Mike, is that the importance of being really connected with all of our community groups, so that we can power up and we can trust each other, call on each other. I mean, we had nothing. We had no truck. We had no tables. And it was just emails and phone calls out to people to beg, borrow and steal so we could make this happen. And we did. I think the one day by 4 o'clock we'd done 23,000 steps. So that was just massive days on the concrete, but really rewarding. And I'm meeting with Janet next week where we're going to be putting out a survey to make sure that it's going to happen again, right? So we need to put systems in place so that we can move quickly and appropriately and take our learnings and do it better than what we've done in the past. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing, Carla. As an empathetic person, you've nearly got me in tears. So I think what that says is, what a powerful story, and, what an amazing resource that you'd pulled together. I've made lots of notes and I've got lots of questions, and I'm already seeing parallels with what I probably know more closely, which is Emma's story. So, and my mind, like you're saying, it's going to happen again. So what amazing lessons.
Yeah, and let's not burn out our teams. Let's work smart at being able to support our vulnerable communities and put the right systems in place to, move forward. Or slow down climate change, one of the two.
Yeah, I do want to say, I think it's just so awesome that's been documented. You had lots of photos of that process, and that's just, you're so caught up, I imagine, in that 4 weeks, that having those things to look back on to remind you of stepping stones or milestones, or seeing those photos of the whole warehouse full was just amazing.
Yeah, unbelievable, eh?
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. I'm going to hold a couple of questions for you for later, and I'm going to pass to Emma. Emma, you're on mute.
Well, that would help, wouldn't it? Oh,
it's working now.
Okay, cool. I was concentrating on getting the screen right, not the talking part. But anyway, so I'm from the Sustaining Hawke's Bay Trust. We've been around for about 30 years in Hawke's Bay. So just a bit of what happened in Hawke's Bay was that with the 4 districts, our whole infrastructure was taken out between Hastings, Napier, Wairoa, Central Hawke's Bay. We lost some really key bridges, so eight bridges down, and it meant that during the initial probably the first 2 weeks, we couldn't actually get to each. Well, the regions couldn't easily get to each of the districts, and so all of our roading and ways that food would come in was pretty much wiped out. So what we did. So we're not a civil defence centre. We've never responded to a disaster before. So on day 2, we started getting all these calls from community and messages via Facebook, letting us know that civil defence had reached them. So we started talking to civil defence, or we tried to talk to civil defence, and they weren't responding to us or the community. So we decided to jump in and start. We developed a logistics team. So these are people that know how to move things around and are not afraid to get on the phone and have a chat to people. And a lot of these logistics volunteers came from all over New Zealand and would take a 2-day shift, then disappear. So we had to make sure we carried the systems on when they moved. We put a call out to as many networks as we belong to and asked for clothes, bedding and food. And in this is day 3. This is all the food coming, the clothing and bedding started to come in from all over New Zealand. And during that time, we started to get volunteers sign up. So we had 280 new volunteers sign up in the first 2 weeks of the disaster, not just from Hawke's Bay, from outside. We then started to receive food, toiletries at scale, at a reasonable scale that we could open the centre up as a hub. So we opened it up, but what we found is that we had queues and queues of people all down the road, but we also had queues and queues of cars and things coming to drop the food and the goods. So logistically, it wasn't really working for us, and we're also getting requests from all over the region for us to send things. So we opened a warehouse. And in the warehouse, we started to take things at scale, so by the pallet load. And then we had amazing businesses that started to jump on board as well. Like the guy on the bottom right is a from Number One Shoes, who just showed up with 2 trailer loads of new gumboots to give out. And that started to happen more and more with lots of different organisations. And then the supermarkets jumped on board and started giving us pallets of food as well. And then through our networks, like EHA and Zero Waste and Community Energy Networks, they had talked to partners on our behalf as well. So we were getting volumes through. We made partnerships with volunteers and commercial kitchens and people with the barbecues, and we got out 22,000 hot meals into the community. So we this picture here, these 2 amazing women from out of region, vegan chefs. They came in and we partnered them with one of the Sikh kitchens, and they were allowed to cook in there, and they cooked I think it was about 250 to 300 meals a day. Those are the beautiful meals on the right. And they went out to EHA, which is the humans, you know how it goes, something like Humans Helping Animals, and they're the ones that rescued all the animals during the flooding, and so feed them because most of them were vegan. So we also worked with 2 Sikh temples, 2 businesses that had 6 barbecues and trailers, and got those out all over the region. We had some businesses to say, we will give you as many thousand sausages as you want a day to get out there. So just amazing community support. So in our response, we got out 22,000 hot meals, and we had 280 new volunteers. We supported 64 community hubs throughout all 4 districts. So we got them food, medicine, toiletries, bedding, water, generators, satellite links, and we did this by helicopter, boat, 4-wheel drive, and truck. So I want to talk a little bit about waste, because I think it's really important to look at what went wrong and what could be done better in other regions. So within our region, the one landfill we have, that the one that everything goes to, was flooded, and so that meant the access was gone, the electricity was gone, and about a quarter of it was completely flooded, so we couldn't get to it, or the councils couldn't get to it. So it had lots of problems with electricity supply, water, and it wasn't until the 1st of March that it was opened again. So you can imagine from the 14th of February to the 1st of March what that means for waste. What happened in the interim is that 5 unconsented waste sites were popped up by Hastings Council and Hawke's Bay Regional Council. They didn't go through treaty partners and any sort of notification, so there was no questioning about where they were popped up, and they are over our aquifer and near our rivers. One of those is general waste in the council, and there was some water machine that shredded everything into little microparticles, and that sits there. And so we got wind of this and questioned the council, and we didn't get any response for about 5 weeks. So we talked to our treaty partners, and they basically asked for a meeting the next day because of the legal obligation of the councils to go through a process on this. And through this, we learned about the 5 sites. We only knew of 1, and we talked about the future and what that looks like from a waste perspective. With this self collection, it's probably going to be about 20 or 30 sites. So we're just working through what that process looks like from a tangata whenua and treaty partner perspective, and how they have say as a strategic upfront space. So that it's not just about consenting and then 20 days at the end of it. One of the things that also came up, there's lots of livestock carcasses and how to deal with those on site. And food waste wasn't collected for 3 weeks in some areas, and I've never smelled anything like it. I didn't realize how much food waste we generated. Like, I know statistically you look at numbers, but when you walk into a suburb and you feel like vomiting because that's all you can smell through the whole suburb, you really get the sense of how much food waste we have. So this is just some pictures for you. So we've got hundreds of houses that were like this. You'd go down the road and you'd see all of the household contents ready to go to the dump. This is from one marae that lost, got quite badly flooded, was right next to a river. And this isn't the building, this is just all the contents on the inside. To give you context, that the hedge at the back is 20 2 foot high, I think it is. And so that pile is absolutely massive. So one of the things that we asked the council when we met with them was about their disaster waste management plan. And they had one, but what they hadn't done is they hadn't thought about everything that could possibly go wrong with a disaster. They had assumed that they would always have the site that they've got and access to it. They didn't take flooding to the level into account that happened. And so one of the things I'd recommend that everyone looks at or asks of their councils is for their disaster management plan and check that they have other sites that they can take waste to and that they are pre-consented, because I think that should be a requirement moving forward. One of the other waste problems that we had is when we put our call out for clothing waste, we received, we were inundated by how much clothing waste we got on, and some of it just really wasn't practical. I mean, no one wants to wear a ball dress in the middle of a cyclone, or torn or damaged or soiled or secondhand underwear that really clearly looks like secondhand underwear. So we think there needs to be a bit more strategic thinking into how clothing is dealt with in these situations, and maybe that's something we could do across the network and come up with some sort of plan for how we respond to each region when they need it. We've been asked by council for a meeting this afternoon to look at the region's clothing waste problem and help with a pop-up shop to clear some of that. But it's a huge scale. People were sending shipping crate of clothes, even now in the last few weeks, which we really just don't need in the region. That adds to the huge waste problem that we already have. But not to say that we aren't grateful for what is sent, we most definitely are, but it's just about let's learn from this and put systems in place. The other thing that came up in terms of waste is plastic bottles. So all for water, all of the hubs were requesting water and civil defence responses to send out thousands and thousands of water bottles every day. There is an opportunity, I think, to work with civil defence to talk about more localised solutions, water tanks in the right places, taking this disaster and other disasters into account. And it also ensures more sustainability going forward. The other thing that there's been lots of waste of is toiletries. One of the solutions that we were talking about in here is that with each of the hubs maybe suggesting that we could have refillery stations so that we could look at long-term localization of solutions. And then the other area of waste is all the food packaging, because everything was non-perishable food. So there was a huge amount of food packaging. And so again, we're talking about localization with the 64 hubs that we work with, and talking about community gardens and how you can ensure resilience within your own community. So yeah, that's our experience.
That's amazing, Emma. There's so much that you've got there. I feel like we could take a whole day to talk about some of the things that you've highlighted as issues, and I just want to say thank you, because you did an amazing job up in Hawke's Bay, and you know, you were one of those people I was directing people to, and yeah, just want to say a massive thank you, especially on behalf of lots of people I know up there. So we've got a pretty tricky task ahead of us. We've got about 16 minutes to ask some questions and add some comments. So lucky we are a small group. I do want to add that we do have some funding for a research project that is going to look at this more long term. We are going to create a survey which tries to understand the breadth of what has happened to your organisations and other communities, and work that into a roadmap for communities for the future. So this kind of information and you sharing your stories is super vital. Jen, who works for Environment Hubs, is going to be leading that, and she's sends her apologies. She's quite sick today, but is really grateful that we're recording this. So I guess I'm just going to open it up to the floor. Maybe if you could use that, even though we're a small group, I might get you to try and either raise your hand or use the raise your hand little thing under reactions at the bottom. If you're not au fait with that, just stick your hand up and I'll come to you. So I'll open it up to the floor for questions and comments. Not seeing any. So, Mike, okay, it's going to jump in.
Question for Emma. What's the relationship now with your local council in regards to future planning?
Very interesting question. We have 5 councils and civil defence. Civil defence still haven't got back to us. Apart from this, this is 3 months on, and this is apart from the request that they've got now on closed waste. Councils are not eager to engage about our community response at all, and if anything, the message that we're getting from the long-term planning and support and partnership processes that there's no funding available to help because of the recovery. And so I think in terms of, this is one of the pieces I've been thinking about in the last few days, in terms of our community response, I think as a community now we need to start meeting and talking about how we work better together going forward, because that drive just isn't coming from the council. But that being said, just on another piece, we worked across 5 organisations, initially 8, to work on a recovery piece of advocacy, and that talks about what we think should happen as part of the rebuild for both community resilience and environment restoration and protection. And we've sent that out, and there's 2 councils that have started engaging with us on that, and one quite strongly, and now started to put all of that in their recovery plan, or not all of it, but a lot of it. So there is some appetite to listen to ideas, but it's more not about really partnering with community so much.
Thanks, Emma. Brigitte.
Kia ora. I just want to acknowledge the 3 speakers and also the emotional impact those presentations had. I personally also live in Tamaki Makaurau, and my property was affected as well, and so I had to move. So yeah, I think, and I have looked into responses, emergency responses, also from a repair perspective, and there are actually quite good kits available through what's it called, Red Cross, and also Australian ones, and some Americans as well. Maybe this is, I don't know if you're probably looking at this, just to develop some emergency response kits, in relation to waste management. But I thought it was quite a good idea, just putting it out there.
That's really interesting, but the Red Cross hasn't been involved in the waste management side of things here. It's been civil defence and 2 of the councils driving it, but we are talking to Red Cross about other things. So, yeah.
I'm happy to share, and also I think the trauma that's impacting people is somewhat important to acknowledge as well, and somehow find ways of supporting people in that way too. Ka pai tō mahi, kia ora.
Thanks, Brigitte. It's a really good reminder. There's a lot of human cost out there with that side of it as well. Daughter.
Did you say daughter?
Yeah, I did, sorry.
Oh. Thank you. It's so interesting to see the differences between like a flood. So maybe some context. The earthquakes happened in Kaikoura in particular, where Innovative Waste Kaikoura were, and they played a really, really quite integral role in the few weeks after. And it's just very fascinating to see the difference between an earthquake and flood storm in terms of the kinds of waste that are produced, and also the similarities as well. And some things that I noticed when you were speaking, Emma, were really around food waste and just how urgent and critical that is. And it really makes me, there's just so much happening in that space, that just to be able to dovetail the fact that there is this huge need with disaster response and huge need just for food resilience is just like, it would be so good to tie those 2 things together. but I have a more specific question, and it relates to Mike's point around using social media. And I think what I heard from Carla was that there was a lot of using existing networks. And Emma, I'm interested in knowing about the impact of telecommunications being out and the ability to share things on social media maybe being hindered, and what else is possible, and was it word of mouth, was it radio, or were people still able to use social media to get the information that they needed? It sounds like you were effective. People, if you've got lines of people, you know, people knew about it, but how did that happen?
With the rural communities, it was people climbing to the top of the hill and communicating when they can, but it's almost like it's almost you talk through a chain of people to get to where you get to. The first week was diabolical because there was just no comms, and it was pretty much people driving to you or sending a helicopter pilot to talk to you, or we were very fortunate because we're located right next to St. John's, and so we're in this grid where we've got electricity, so we had electricity the whole time. Whereas most of the central cities didn't have it for a week, and then out further some of them did it for 6 weeks. And so if you were here at work, we could text, but the problem is you couldn't text anyone because they didn't have it at the other end. But social media was absolutely key, so we started sending e-messages, and that seems to be because there were satellite links. People can connect up to the satellite links at the top of hills, and that's how we ended up getting most of our messages from the second week onwards. But what we have learned is that, and what we are encouraging hubs to do is that we need to ensure that every hub or likely hub has a satellite link going forward. But we're looking at how we can find plans where you have the infrastructure there, but you don't have to pay for it until it's activated, because a lot of those plans are not so great. And as soon as you've got that, people can be online on Facebook. Instant messaging is the easiest way to communicate, and using social media. So I think social media from probably the second week onward played a huge role in everything that happened. Lots of groups started popping up, and as an organisation, we got invited into community groups for a residential area, and we started to watch the conversations in there. But a lot of it was word of mouth and through a whole chain of people, and that's how it happened. I think people are aware with satellite links now that you need to have satellite and some sort of solar next to each of the community hubs for situations like this in the future, and I believe that's a focus of Red Cross, is enabling that to happen.
Thank you.
Can I just say real quick that that's been a real issue, the solar component. Even the Waiheke local board, they reviewed what they thought they had, which was a bunch of generators at different places, and they realized that they were mostly rusted out and no one knew if they were in working order or not. They're like, yeah, you can go try if you want. I know it's under the building somewhere, and they've put thousands of dollars into these systems to not be used or to not have them functional. So we've been tasked with putting a one-pager together for them to fund battery banking with additional solar at the center, that we can have a system by which we can reduce what we're using from the battery and keep that for emergency use. But the thing is, then we know it's working. We're using it on a regular basis, and that when it comes down to it, it can be ready to go. And so you have that battery banking that you could, prioritize and have a system in place that it wouldn't be used up for just randomly, running the center. You could kind of shift that and use it for emergency purpose only. So we're submitting on that this week.
So I'll do Vicky and Brigitte, and then I might draw a line under that. I think if you have other questions, maybe chuck them in the chat, just being very aware of time. Vicky, I'll go to you.
Kia ora. Thank you guys also for sharing this amazing anecdotes and information on what you've been through. You've done such an amazing mahi. Thank you. What I was thinking is reflecting on what Mike brought up about having to drop all paid work to act on that, how we can, going forward, also think of the sustainability of our organizations when you need to drop everything to be on community response, on emergency response, how we can, I guess, pledge for some sort of support on that, so that we can survive after that. I don't know how it was financially for the other groups, Emma and Carla, how it was for you guys in terms of like your survival through all of this in terms of finances and stuff, how disruptive it was with your other activities.
We at the startup, we only had 3 staff, so we hadn't started any of our water stuff yet, but it did push our water contract back a couple of months. So everything was done by volunteers. We were fortunate enough to have a couple of organisations and give us some money for helicopters and a few sort of logistical things. So we made it work on the budget that we had, and the only thing that we really stopped doing was our recycling.
Again, we got no funding. We had 3 staff to start with and ended with 70 plus volunteers. And I guess the cost that we took on was just feeding volunteers and keeping them happy. Food is the way to people's heart. So no support there, but I'm glad we were able to help.
It does make me wonder if in the future, if recognised providers such as yourselves could have an agreement with someone like the Red Cross Philanthropy that, costs that you incur could be reimbursed, pre-agreed costs, so that you knew you would have that, that surety that you could spend funds you had in the bank knowing that you would get it back. That would be really interesting.
That's what we're working on right now, and they seem open to the idea. So
yeah, awesome. Brigitte just put into the chat, Emma, I'd be interested in your thoughts just quickly. I know that some of the waste and sludge, etc., was potentially toxic in some areas, but Brigitte was just saying that in Australia there were, probably some instances, whether that was just maybe like straight water where electrical appliances, etc., could be repaired.
So with the waste, the way that the council has classified, they've got the 5 dumps because there's different types of silt. So there's one for totally contaminated, but they tell us they haven't put anything there. But there's some for the problem is the carcasses and the waste through that, and they have found bacteria in some of the waste. And the classification, one of them is actually clean waste, but it's only clean silt waste because everything's been pulled out of it. The advice that we're getting from councils here is not to recycle anything, or in terms of, not to recycle, not to repair anything in terms of electronic waste. But I think that's something that we probably need to research going forward, because I think the response to waste here has been quite poor with flooding. It's almost like things are in the too hard basket, so let's just get rid of it. And they're also now doing a feasibility on waste to energy here to get rid of the high amount of waste that we have and to carry on doing that in the region. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of what they actually want to burn in that waste to energy. But I think it would be, and I know silt is one of those things that could be good as part of your compost, so it would be great to do some research for future projects to deal with it quite differently from what they're dealing with it now. But one more point is the other problem we had is that our composting site went underwater, which is bio-rich. Their site is just below sea level in Napier, and so they're going to have to move eventually anyway, but that went underwater, which limited what could be composted as well.
We did some research because obviously all waste management trucks in Auckland were diverted to clean up, and there was like streets and streets of rubbish. And yeah, so I can send out to the group, if you like, the research piece that we've done, and also other studies that have been done overseas using contaminated product by floodwater, and that the process to cleaning it is a lot of chemicals and a lot very labour intensive. And so we decided not to proceed forward with going through that process. Yeah.
Super interesting, isn't it? Any other quick questions? Otherwise, I'll look to thank our speakers and close up. I feel like I would love to have, especially those of you who were in the emergency response space, just together in a room and just talk about the things that you experienced and you know, those lessons. So look, that might be something that we look at trying to do as part of your research. So just going to say a really big thank you for sharing those stories, and Zero Waste Network for gathering us all together here today so we can hear those stories. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that we talk about this. As you say, Carla, it's going to happen again. And if we can help other people get prepared and learn from this, then we'll all be in a better space. So thanks so much for your mahi, and thanks for everyone else for joining us today. I'm just going to put our closing karakia into the chat in case you want to say that with me. So just another thank you to everyone, and I think this is quite fitting about returning to everyday activities, because there is a whole lot of emotion and mahi involved in this kaupapa. Kia whakaeria te tapu, kia wā te ai te ara, kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai, haumia huia taiki. So take care, thank you, and lovely to see you all today.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.